When Wilt came to the league, total monster. I can't explain to you. I cannot begin to describe to you as an opponent how good he was. In fact, I told him, I said, you know, Wilt, I think I'm the only guy on this planet that knows how really good you are. Because he was smart on top of everything else. Yeah. He was the smartest guy I played against. But if you think about this, he averaged 50 points a game for a whole season. Now you have to have energy to even do that.
Yeah.
He played the game like no one had ever seen. He did things no one might ever see again. 7 feet, 1 inch tall, and as athletic as any man who ever walked the earth. You try guarding that on a basketball court sometime.
Wilt led the league in rebounds 11 of his 13 years. Russell only beat him twice. You'd have to say that Wilt Chamberlain was the greatest rebounder of all time.
Do you know what the NBA rebound record is?
It's 55 rebounds by Wilt Chamberlain.
You know who the other center was that night?
It was Bill Russell.
I got 55 rebounds against the Boston Celtics in one particular game. And the thing I remember most about the 55 rebounds is that when the game was over, that I was probably more tired than I've ever been in my entire life.
Can you imagine one man getting 50 rebounds in a basketball game? And these guys today talk about how great they are. Sure, there's some great basketball players. Guy gets 50 rebounds.
How about the fact that in one season, he averaged over 26 rebounds?
He called me up one day. Sports Illustrated had a cover and said, "Is Dennis Rodman the best rebounder ever?"
Oh, God.
And Wilt was so annoyed. And I cleaned it up saying annoyed. So he calls me up and he asked me, did I believe this bleep? And he says, I had more rebounds a quarter than he had on the whole game. You have no idea how physically imposing he was. Physically, he was still the most imposing physical player that's ever played this league, period. There's no one that's come close to him in terms of just physical prowess.
One night, Chamberlain, he just lost it. And Chamberlain says, you see this arm? Do you know what I can do to you with this arm?
He would dunk on guys, and if they put their hand up to block it, he could have probably broken their hand. He would let the ball go. That wasn't his makeup. His makeup was, I don't really want to hurt anybody.
He had that Goliath syndrome in that he was so big that if he hurt somebody, that's this big giant picking on everybody. And so he would never hurt anybody. We took advantage of that.
I mean, they had some big old boys on this team who would come out to do some different things. They had a pretty nasty team at times just then. But
That was no accident.
Yeah, no accident, right? You're right.
You could have hurt guys. You could have slammed guys to the floor. You could have looked to pick fights. You didn't do that.
That was one of the saving things about playing against the guy who did physically imposing, is that I cannot recall even hearing about anything where he tried to hurt anybody. And
that's good and bad.
You know you could rack him up, and you know that he's not going to really hurt you.
Did you need more killer instinct?
Well, it could be said. It could be said. But also remember, when you're my size, also I was equipped with a little bit of emotional stuff going on there because I knew I was bigger and stronger than everybody else. I wanted to also show that I was skillful. I wasn't out there to really try to show that I could just knock people over and whatever.
And you didn't want to just play into the image of brute strength.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I want to play basketball as the way Naismith really invented the game to be played.
Actually, it was better than he envisioned.
Probably you're right.
I'll never forget when we first started playing against each other. And what I used to always do is I'd size up the guy that I'm going to play against and see what How do I have to play against him? And so I look at him and I add up his assets and put his liabilities on this side. So I said he's tall, strong. Well, most people know there were never guys in the league could outrun him.
Is that right?
Right.
That fast?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then he was smart.
Yeah.
You couldn't trick him. You understand me? You couldn't BS him. You couldn't do that. He just, that was bad. That was bad. And so I said, geez, what am I going to do? I got to show up. The game's on the schedule. I got to play it. It took me years to find out how to play him, because if you play him you can't play him the same way all the time, because he'll make adjustments. I had about 4 or 5 different ways I'd play him. But the idea was that I never could stop him, but I could put some speed bumps. That's the best I could come up with. My memories of him were, first of all, he sent me through hell so many nights. And I knew how good he was, and he knew that I knew how good he was.
Chamberlain won 7 straight scoring titles, 11 rebounding crowns, and 2 championship rings. Yet, for most of his 14 seasons, he played in a shadow of perfection cast by the press.
He's had a lot of terrible things said about him because he didn't win more.
Wilt was just picked apart more than any athlete.
He was so great that no matter what he did, people never accepted it as being enough.
People would from time to time call me a loser. Well, if I'm a loser, then damn near everybody else who was playing was
Seeing that they won all the time.
They won all the time. You got the losing is basketball players in the world, and then you got one team that wins it all. So I was in great company as a loser.
It was terribly unfair to brand him a loser. Runner-up to the public is loser. But to the people involved in the game, if you're playing in the last game played that year, you had a hell of a year.
There was nothing that angered him more than the perception that he was a loser, that he couldn't win the big games, that Bill Russell brought out the best in his teammates, whereas Wilt stifled his teammates.
If you say that he was a loser because of his record versus Russell, I ask you to look at the players around him. Who is Ted Luckenbill? Who is York Larisi? And most important to me, who is Joe Rucklick? These were the players he had around him.
Bill Russell was the greatest winner of all time, but the greatest basketball player, the most dominant basketball player that ever put on sneaks was Wilt Chamberlain.
And he was much better defensively than most people knew.
Offensive was what your specialty was, not defense.
Well,
Bill Russell.
Yeah, Bill Russell was considered to be the much finer defensive player.
Well, was he?
Yeah. I think that Bill Russell was considered to be the most finest.
And you think Wilt Chamberlain was every bit as good a defensive player as Bill Russell was? Could block as many shots?
Unfortunately, if they had kept block shots, I think you and I would both know the answer right now. Who was? Unfortunately, that didn't happen until after I left basketball.
In those days, I didn't keep block shots. I kept them through all games that Wilt played. Russell blocked shots, but not as many as Wilt.
Here's what became the standard wisdom. Wilt was the best all-round talent, certainly for a big man, in the history of the game. The statistics are awesome, but Russell had the knack of contributing better to winning teams. His teams won 11 championships in a 13-year span, defeated Wilt's teams in the playoffs, I think 7 of 8 meetings. 4 of those meetings went to 7 games, and Russell's Celtics won all the 7th games, although the 4 of them by a combined total of only 9 points. But maybe that solidified the notion in people's minds that it would get down to a close game, and somehow, although the stats would be on Wilt's side, Russell would have the knack for winning and his team would prevail. So people said that Russell was the winner and the greater champion.
In these crucial final seconds, neither Wilt or Russell was involved in the critical plays. He was not the reasons his team lost.
We lost 4 7th games by 9 points. But suppose those other guys who helped them to win those little close games right then, it would have been Jerry West to do something for us, or Hal Gray or something for us at that particular time, or Chet Walker, I might have won 4 more world championships. But forget about the I might have. I'm just saying that because I lost those 4 by 9 points, I don't see where that makes Russell that much better than me, or where it should change how people feel about me as far as I am as a player.
Wilt Chamberlain driving on Russell, and you may see a lot of that now.
Chamberlain played for 8 coaches in his 14 years in the NBA.
8 different coaches means 8 different styles of play. He had to adjust to every one.
And it wasn't fair. He never had the system, and he didn't have the great coach and motivator that Russell had.
Unfortunately, from Wilt's standpoint, he was judged as an individual against a team.
What the Celtics had going has never been duplicated in professional sports. I mean, Wilt, he never had a chance. It was all working against him.
We had 8 Hall of Famers come out of those late 50, early 60 teams.
The Celtics were head and shoulders above anybody in the NBA in terms of an organization.
That's how Boston stayed on top so long. They kept weaving them together. When you do that to a team and you get the chemistry right, that's how you win a basketball game.
That kind of stability is an incredible part of Russell's success, as opposed to what Wilt went through.
He never had the continuity of one particular coach, nor did he have the benefit of one specific system.
There were games when he absolutely abused Russell, but Russell's teams always won, so he left this impression that Russell owned Chamberlain.
He played for a great basketball team, that had a great coach, and he was a great player himself. But you know what? Teams win, not individuals. And that's proven right down the line in every doggone sport.
Chamberlain would say, "What do you mean? Russell held me. I got 35 points. I got 21 rebounds, he only got 19. So that in Chamberlain's way of assessing things, he won.
The numbers don't lie. In their 143 confrontations, Chamberlain averaged 29 points, twice as much as Russell, and 28 rebounds, 4.5 more than the Celtics center.
If you statistically match what he did against Bill Russell, it was no match at all.
If Russell owned Wilt, he must have let Wilt score a whole lot of points and grab a whole lot of rebounds after the game was decided, because Wilt put up awesome numbers against Russell.